Lenny's newsletter, Lenny's podcast. His latest podcast was with Jenny Nguyen, who is the lead designer for Claude Cowork. Now, if you haven't tried that, it's pretty cool. It's basically taking Claude code and exposing it to business users without having to be in the terminal and giving you kind of some of the same ingrained functionality in your computer. It's really, really powerful, really cool. There's some interesting stories about it. The If you haven't heard the podcast, part of the urban legend about Claude Cowork is they built it in 10 days. In the podcast, you learn that's not exactly true. Yes, the actual build took 10 days, but there was a lot of research and planning and experimentation that went in up front. Once they decided what they were going to do, they built it in about 10 days. But we're going to talk a little bit about the podcast itself. Lenny posted on LinkedIn his top takeaways from the discussion, and some of them kind of got me riled up a little bit. And then I had to think about them, and I wanted to see what everybody else thought about it. Kelly's dropping a link to the post in the chat so you can see it yourself if you haven't already seen it. But essentially what it comes down to is Jenny asserted that design is splitting into two. There are rapid build cycles and those are breaking with that classic discovery loop. When we talk about diverging and then designing and converging, and when you're talking about that double diamond kind of approach to innovation and design, she's basically saying that that's breaking and it's no longer relevant. And at the same time, their designers are really focused on short-term vision, like 3 to 6 month vision, not 5-year vision. And they're often collaborating in code. Now, I've got my take on that, and we'll get to that in a second. But overall, what she said is that the teams that are winning, they ship fast, they learn publicly, they combine generalists and deep specialists, and something that she talked about cracked new grads, or basically young people who are just entering the workforce and aren't burdened by the biases that we've built up, and they're not jaded and they don't know what's not possible. And so they're jumping into these tools without any preconceived notions and just doing things and being successful because they don't know what they're not supposed to be able to do. And they adapt really fast, and they really latch on to AI-driven product development. So my big question, and I want to introduce our panel here before we get too far into it. We have got a fantastic panel. Let's get started with, I want to first, right here in the studio with me, I told you we have got Ebony Johnson. She went from a tumor registrar to being a product manager. She's now at the Home Depot. And well, she's not at the Home Depot now. She's here in the studio at Podium Studios with me right now. But Ebony has been part of our community for a very long time, and I'm glad that you could be here. Looking forward to having you on our panel discussion today. Next up, I have got a guy from ADP. He teaches AI to do payroll for us. So this is Tiago Broom, Senior Director at ADP. Welcome, Tiago. Good morning. And then we've got John Harmer, who has survived every product management trend known to man. He is the product lead for Google Cloud at Google right here in Atlanta. So, hey, John, welcome. Before that, he was a pastry chef. And then last but certainly not least, for the first time on Product Coffee, we've got my friend Shardul Mehta. He has been in product management for 30 years. He's still saying yes and in improv. And Shardul runs the Street Smart Product Manager, if you're familiar with that newsletter or that meetup series. He does a weekly series as well that's got a fantastic lineup coming over the next few months. So check out Street Smart Product Manager if you're not already connected with Shardul. He's got some great folks that he's talking to and delivering some fantastic insights as well. Glad you could be here with us, Shardul. Welcome.
Good to be here. Thanks, Jason.
All right. So let's get into it. And John, I'm going to start with you because you and I were kind of chatting about that. We were texting about this last night, and I know you heard this episode. And by the way, for those of you in the audience, this is not just a panel discussion. We're going to tee it up. Would love your take on it as well. Would love to hear what you have to think about this topic. Whether you listen to the podcast or read the article or not, you're going to hear what we're talking about. Jump in, turn on your camera, introduce yourself, Tell us what has your attention. Tell us your take on what we're talking about here today. But I want to start with you, John, as I kind of teed up some of the key takeaways. I know you listened to it and shared it with your design team, shared this podcast with your design team as well. What was your hot take on what you heard there?
That we all need to change how we're doing things, right? So the engineers can do things that are designy that they couldn't do before, and designers can do things that are engineering-y that they couldn't do before. My team has one designer for, I don't know, 20 or 30 engineers. There's probably not quite enough design capacity. And so we had just an engineer recently with Stitch from Google. It allows you to sort of vibe UI design stuff. He vibed up a feature, started coding it, like did all the things without needing any input from the designer at all. But it causes some existential dread from the designers when things like that happen. So we're, working through it. I loved that the webinar came literally a week, or the podcast came like a week after I'd had those conversations with my UX team, like how do we work in this new world? And so it's fascinating to be on the cutting edge of this kind of thing.
Was there anything that she said or that Lenny took away from this? In the LinkedIn post, he's got 10 top takeaways. And he also put, or I don't know if he put them all in the LinkedIn, he put it in his newsletter. Was there anything that you disagreed with or saw in a different way?
I mean, there's sub-specific things, like Jenny used to work at Figma. And so if she's saying Figma is essential, I mean, something like Figma is probably still essential. But tools like, you can go from Stitch to AI Studio to Figma, or Stitch to Figma pretty easily. And so it's like having a nice ecosystem of tools that work together, so you don't have to just like take a screenshot and bring it into the new AI tool to try to hack your best way. I think that's whatever your tool set is, the integrated version of that path is probably the best thing for you to use. I agree that chat as an interface isn't going away. It's just a natural way of doing things for most people. But I also think that UI as an interface isn't going away. Like, people need to interact with things. They need, like, even on, like, I do a lot of dashboards and reporting. I need the dashboard to be the dashboard the same every time, not for somebody to go to a chatbot, ask for the answer, and have it come up with different variations depending on who's asking. That is also useful for one-off explorations, but for the OKR tracking, we need the one thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I find myself still building dashboards too to get the information that I need in a glance. The chat interface is really nice when I don't know exactly what I need and I want to go free form. But when you know what you know, you want to be able to get to it quickly. Or when you know what you need to know, you want to be able to get to it pretty quickly. Tiago, good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing well. I don't know, did you if you heard the podcast or saw the article, but the general thesis that these massive changes are here to stay, and the fundamental notion of how to do good design is forever changed is really kind of the interesting topic that I want to play with here today and hear what your thoughts were.
Yeah, no, I saw the article. I didn't listen to the podcast. I tend to agree with Jenny, especially about like building trust through speed. I think the way that these LLMs are helping speed up the entire development cycle, application life cycle, for lack of a better term. Like right now, you don't need to, as long as you know exactly what you need to do and why that's important. I think that the precision can be built much quicker. And this is one of the things that that I face with the design teams that I work with. I tell them, like, I think we are at the stage where we need to release something. We need to have a good idea of how things are going to look like, and we need to work on a compromise, which kind of lead, and I have the article open here, and I was reading some points in, and I think that it's really that, like, building a nice compromise so you can react quickly. And I think we spend like way too much time trying to, like, these big design sprint sessions, spending a week trying to get something that translates the problems that the client or the user is facing. And then we build something and then we move on to the next thing. Again, To me, those design sprints, they can be reduced from 1 week to 1 hour. And as long as you are able to curate all the outputs, make sure that everything looks according to like your goals, right? And the OKRs that John mentioned on when he was speaking, then you can focus a little more on the feature once it's out in the wild and how it's behaving. I also agree about the chat. Chat is here to stay. I think I still see a little resistance on embracing conversational UIs. Of course, there is the challenge is how to make conversations meaningful, right? Using LLMs and not overwhelm the user with a bunch of text so they get lost. So there's a lot of good in there that it's kind of what we start seeing when you want to shorten the development cycle, and you want to release faster because hey, now we have LLMs that can help us achieve that.
Right, and that's kind of one of the things that I was thinking of when I was reading this and when I was listening to. And by the way, if you didn't listen to the actual podcast, I think Lenny summarized it really well with his key takeaways. I think I didn't hear anything that he didn't summarize there myself. But what I did notice in this whole notion of speeding up the cycle and building trust through speed, not perfection, which is the way Lenny summarized it. Isn't that the promise of Agile in the first place? We talked about fast cycling and delivering something, or lean in the first place. We talked about delivering an iteration really quickly with real value that your customers and your users could react to, and you could take feedback from and act on it. Isn't this the exact same thing, just with new tooling? Shardul, what do you think?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So I didn't listen to the podcast. I did read the LinkedIn posts that you sent me. It never ceases to amaze me how, for some reason, when somebody from some name brand company declares this is the way it's going to be, we all kind of lose our minds and accept that as kind of like, well, this is it. This is gospel. This is now universal truth. I mean, I guess, maybe that's the way they're doing things at Anthropic. I don't know. I'm not there. That said, look, there's always going to be a need for speed, whether it's agile, lean, whatever. At the end of the day, time to revenue is important. That's what it boils down to. So like, if you go back, you mentioned Agile. The reason why Agile got adopted is because when it was sold to the executives who don't really fully understand product development, software development, technology, and all that stuff, what they heard was, hey, we can get to market faster. We can validate concepts faster. We can get to revenue faster. I mean, I was literally at one company where it was described as pods. I don't know why it was called pods. And it was like, hey, instead of now taking 6 months or 12 months to develop a thing, we're going to do it in 90 days. It was an arbitrary number, but it was sold that way and everybody adopted it. Was Agile successful or not? I've been through plenty of Agile transformations. I know I recognize some of the people on the call here. I know they have. We can debate whether it's been successful or not. At the end of the day, if I'm a product leader, if I'm an executive, if I'm a business owner, and I hear, hey, there is a capability now, whether it's a tool, a technology, a process, a system, a methodology that will help me validate ideas faster, validate my bets, because what we're doing is we're making investable bets. It's going to help me validate that faster or invalidate it that, hey, we should not do this and move on. And if we do decide to pursue it, we can get it out to market, get customer feedback, get to revenue quickly. I'm absolutely going to be all ears on that. So I think like that's like part of my big takeaway, aside from like the individual pieces and details that she seems to talk about in terms of like who to hire and design processes and things like that. The one other thing, though, caveat I'll say, and this is the thing that I see a lot of tech companies, especially those who are kind of in the forefront of pushing the envelope, miss, is regulated industries. So it's all well and good to say, hey, we can iterate fast. We can just put something out there and we can keep iterating on it. But I've worked in several regulated industries. It's not that simple in a regulated industry. And I'll give you a very specific example. I've worked in health tech for a long time. And I've lost track of the number of times where me and my CTO was hauled onto a call or hauled into a room by a physician who would tell us, listen, you can't just change the color of a button. You can't just change copy on the page. You cannot just move text from here on the left side of the page to the right side of the page because it completely disrupts my flow. I'm not thinking about the UI. I'm going from muscle memory and I'm trying to serve the patient. And worse, you can't change that for the patient because then I'm troubleshooting and that's not what I want to do. So we had to actually throttle it back. We were able to actually release updates daily. We had that capability as an engineering team, as a product team. We throttled that back to monthly updates for them. And even that, we got tremendous pushback on. So I think, that's the other side of the coin that often, like when I see posts like this, that they don't talk about. And that's the tension, right? We want speed, but at the same time, we also have to do it in a way that brings customers along at, speed that they can absorb or consume.
That's great insight. I see exactly what you're saying there. It is the promise of the value we're supposed to create in the first place. It's just a new perspective on how to do it. But that whole invention of Agile, I've always said Agile and specifically Scrum and the role of the product owner was invented because strategic leadership wasn't doing a good job of feeding the teams. The engineering teams were trying to create value and they couldn't figure out how to do it. And so now I see a trend where engineering teams and more engineering focused teams or competent teams are starting to take that back. And we're seeing this design acceleration like Jennifer was talking about. But I do also kind of see it almost as an anti-pattern. Just because Claude can spin up seven different designs doesn't necessarily mean that they're well-researched designs. That means they're predicted designs. And yeah, the prediction gets better and better. How are you seeing changes, Ebony? What are you seeing when you read this article? What were some of the takeaways or the thoughts that you had about the evolution?
I'm glad that Shardul actually has brought up these regulated industries because one of the first thoughts I had, or one of the first feelings it evoked out of me, is the nervousness of new grads making decisions based off something that an AI has given them in an industry like finance, credit, healthcare. Like new grads certainly have a place, but I look at AI in general like my intern, right? Like it's read all the textbooks and it can give me its insight based off what it's read. Answer. But I have to be the human with a lived experience to be able to determine whether what it's telling me is safe enough to put out in a product, in a website, in any output that I'm looking to create. I have to be able to evaluate that. And so the piece that she mentioned about, the new grad like you mentioned, like they're not afraid to do things, and that is great. But removing the middle layer of management, which she also mentioned, right? Like she's saying, hey, I'm going back to IC because of the nervousness of where middle management going to be safe. I completely understand that as well, because now companies are trying to remove the number of decision makers that are involved between, are we going to do this or not?
Yeah.
Right. So that they can move fast. So that it always just makes me a little weary that are people thinking about, do we still value expertise? Do we still value that someone has learned the things and lived the things so that we're doing the right thing next? So that's kind of my take on it.
Jason, address the middle management thing?
Yeah,
real quick.
For it.
So this is not a new thing. It happened in the late 80s where there was these massive layoffs and companies like Digital Equipment Corporation, when that existed, IBM and others, they removed huge swaths of middle management layer. It happened again in the 90s. So every time, and tech seems to be particularly sensitive to this, every time we start this thing of, we got to move faster, we remove the middle management layer, and then it comes back. And the reason I believe is pretty straightforward, is because as you scale at a certain point, you do need a certain amount of middle management. You don't, obviously we don't want bloat, but you do need a certain amount of middle management, because as long as you have people, as long as you have processes and things like that, you need a middle management layer to be able to manage that at a minimum. The senior executives start realizing that they can't keep reaching down. It's one thing if I'm doing it at, let's say, a $5 or $10 million startup. You start becoming 100 million, 200 million, half a billion, a billion. You can't just say, well, we're going to have the CEO and the C-suite and then like all the worker bees and that's it. Like, it's just, and maybe that'll last for, I don't know, 6 months, a year. And then ultimately, like, and I've been in those shoes as well. You're like, you know what? I got to get a number two. I can't do my job and keep managing the people and the processes and all of that sort of stuff. So inevitably it sort of cycles around. I don't know that this is a permanent trend forever. It may not be at the scale that I think we saw during the pandemic, where there was probably a lot of overhiring, but nonetheless, like, I don't know that it's gone away forever. And the other point about going back to IC, so I did that. I did a brief stint where I went back, I did an IC role. I had my own reasons for doing it. So I don't know that, like, I don't know Jenny. I don't know that my example or her example now becomes a universal trend. If that is something you want to do, then great. Do it because you want to be closer to the product, to the tech, to the customer. If you're happy being in a leadership role, which I've done a lot of as well, then great. Do that. You do you, right? And then just try and find the right fit within the right company for what you're wanting to do.
I think that's a great call out, that this whole trend, when I was in college, there was all the talk about downsizing and then right sizing. And you're right, it was a wave, and then companies got big again and they scale up to learn things and do new things. And then they figure out where they are and what the new opportunities are, and they scale back down. It's this constant optimization. It's been particularly brutal lately, but you're right. It's a trend that we've seen before. It's a great call out. I see Scott's got his hand up, and I want to jump over to him. So anybody from the audience, if you'd like to weigh in on this or anything else, or just introduce yourself to the Product Coffee crew here, put your hand up. We would love to invite you to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, who you're with, and what has your attention right now, whether it be this conversation or something else. Scott, go for it, man. Welcome.
Thanks. For the folks who I haven't met, I'm Scott, president of Tyner Blaine. I do product management and strategy consulting across different industries. What I love about the first cups is they should come with a trigger warning. So I'm totally triggered on this stuff. Bunch of great conversation in the chat, including questions like, what is design? And the frame that I have. So when I unpack it, it's like, there's a continuum from super short term to super long term. Long term, you've got business design, service design, experience design, usability, and visual design, right? Like, there's this continuum of like, how tactical and how specification anchored are you, right? So tactically in time and domain. And in Anthropic's case, right, their time span of discretion, their long-term plan is 3 months. So they really aren't solving the what should we do pieces of design. They're really focused, certainly in the context of this article or this summary of the discussion, focused on the how do we do it aspects of design. And those are fundamentally different headspaces. Focusing in that how do we do it space, I think there's a metaphor from appreciative inquiry that really resonates with me, is that, are you fixing broken things or are you creating new opportunities? Like, are you in a repairing mindset or are you in an improving mindset? Mm-hmm. And there's sort of fundamentally different cognitive approaches to trying to do stuff. An LLM can't go invent. All it can do is provide a textual response that's the most likely one to be acceptable, which means it's going to build on whatever its training set is, which means it's going to be leveraging best case some of the visual design and usability heuristics of how do I avoid being broken in the way I do something. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be able to come in and introduce this is a way to create a moment of magic, which is a great book, by the way.
Okay.
Oh, no, wait, that's Moments That Matter. Anyway, it's not going to be able to take you from meh to amazing. All it's going to be able to do is help you avoid some landmines. And there are times now when I put on my product manager hat against that backdrop, there are times where you don't need to be great. You just need to be adequate. And I think the automation aspects of solving these tactical design problems in a what's good enough, like I don't need a compelling login screen or password recovery process flow, but I need one that's not broken. And I can leverage into the things that LLMs are good at, which is predicting the most likely to be right response. It's the same in coding. It's going to be the same in design. It's the same in writing, but it's taking you to the middle. It's not taking you to someplace great. It's a repairing mindset. And so that's going to limit the application of this. So like when I think about all of us as product people saying, where should we augment what we're doing with AI or fully decouple and automate stuff, focus on those things, right? When I was an engineer, I would have loved to have some sort of automated assistance to help me do a stack tolerance analysis in the assembly I was designing. But the last thing I would want is it to come in and say, hey, you should take this approach to designing your component and the stack of assembly items, right? Like there's a difference between trying to be innovative and trying to not screw up and do the busy work and the stuff that gets in your way of solving meaningful problems. Yeah, sorry, I got a little bit triggered. I climbed up on a soapbox. I'm like, yeah, this stuff is useful. It's useful tactical, and it's useful when you're not trying to be great. You're just trying to be adequate.
I think if we ever rename the first cut segment, we will maybe strongly consider trigger warning. Yeah, that's great. No, that's great perspective. I don't think I disagree with anything that you just said. I don't know that I could agree with you anymore. I really appreciate that. Clay, I see you've got your hand up, and you said something in the chat a minute ago that I really wanted to come back around to, because you talked about advocating for aiming less because we can now shoot faster, but shooting is still more expensive than aiming, especially when you scale up. And one of the things that this podcast talked about specifically was the myth that Claude Cowork was built in 10 days. Yes, the engineers built and launched the research preview in 10 days, but they had been experimenting and thinking about the foundation and the use cases and what might work and what might be an interesting research preview. They've been thinking about that for a really long time. And then they built an iteration to get feedback on in 10 days. Clay, so thanks for pointing that out. They were able to shoot quickly, but before they did that, they took some aim. Go ahead, Clay. Welcome. Tell everybody who you are.
Well, try to condense this. So I'm founder and principal product manager at a company that makes speech therapy software, Bungalow Software. So I think we'd all agree, certainly it's my experience, that every step in the development process is about 10 times more expensive, right? So if you catch a problem and the pain level, it's a unit cost of 1. If you don't catch it until you release to 10,000 customers, it's a unit cost of 10,000 or 1,000 or whatever, maybe more. And I think that multiplier is still there. Maybe it's not 10. So every step gets more expensive. And AI is helping with all of those steps. So when we say development is faster, even if it was as fast to develop a UI prototype as it is to draw one, and I don't think it ever will be, but let's assume it's close, you still have testing, debugging, release, support, and maintenance. And now you've created one iteration of that, and you've got all those expenses. So if we are just deferring choices to downstream because we say, well, we don't need to figure out what the customer wants exactly because we'll just throw a bunch of spaghetti against the wall really fast and we'll let them choose, right? You may have experienced this in development where a developer can't decide what color to make the text, right? So they're like, oh, we'll let the user choose, right? And so you get into software, you're like, oh, well, it's infinitely configurable. And it's because they have kicked the can down the road. So I think that maybe we can aim, I don't know that we can do less discovery because you can, and maybe I'm biased, I'm a product manager, but if you have discovery is so much cheaper than development that you always want to have as much as you can. Maybe we can release sooner because we only need to be 90% sure about our design and we can let the user verify it, but we shouldn't be throwing spaghetti against the wall and without even filtering it down to the ones most likely. It's kind of like you've ever done an A/B test without any thought. You're like, well, let's just do 10 designs and let the user figure out what ad's going to be the best. No, you try to put up the best 2 ads you can on AdWords, and then you decide. So you do some pre-editing ahead of time. And I'll shut up now.
You're absolutely right. I agree completely. I want to welcome the panel that you've already met this morning, but I want to hit that again and welcome here with me Tiago, who's the Senior Director of Product Management at ADP. He's working on AI products, specifically in the payroll world and the human capital management world. John Harmer has been the lead product manager at Google Cloud for, I can't remember how many years it's been, but since the pandemic, for sure. He's been one of the leaders in the innovation that we see coming out of Google every single day, week, and month. Thank you for being here, John. Ebony is as I said earlier, it has had a really non-traditional path into product management, but she's now a great leading product manager at the Home Depot, and her value there and the things that she gets to work on touch most of you in some way that you may or may not even realize. And then Shardul Mehta is the street smart product manager. He has led product at a wide variety of companies. He's coached thousands of product managers. He has an amazing newsletter that I highly recommend. Comes out once a month. And then he's got a weekly podcast / webinar series that has some of the best thought leaders in product management having really intelligent conversations. Should be a great part of your community as well. Welcome to you all. Thank you for being here. And I want to just kind of dive into the great product management unbundling. And the way this came up is I was looking actually for a first cup topic several weeks ago. And when I did, I came across an idea that I didn't think we could possibly get through in 15 or 20 minutes. And it was really kind of the notion that we're hearing a lot of hype right now about how product management orgs are flattening, they're downsizing, and people who are responsible for things that many of us think of as core product management responsibilities, the people who are doing those jobs are changing a lot and shifting a lot. And we hear, for example, user story writing. We can argue about whether product managers ought to be writing user stories or just ensuring that they're there or not, or requirements for that matter. That's evolving quite a bit because now you've got AI. The one thing that LLMs are really good at is acceptance criteria for requirements, is saying, okay, here's what you're asking for. Here are the things that you need to test to prove that you actually accomplished it. Cutting that work in half so that fewer and fewer people are necessary to do that kind of work on a scaled basis. LinkedIn ended their associate product manager program, replaced it with an associate full stack builder program where they're attracting people who have some business and marketing and product management and design chops, but also have some engineering capability. So they're looking for builders who have business and design sense so that they can put some of these top end builders together on a smaller team of 3 or 4 people and move faster and more flexibly. Brian Chesky of Airbnb fame got really blown up a year or two ago when he basically said, we're changing fundamentally how we do product management at Airbnb. I am the lead product manager. I'm the CEO. I'm the founder. I've got the vision. I own product management. We're going to have 30 or 40 people that help kind of get into the details on that. But really, most of our product managers are really going to be more like product marketers now. We don't need the product management function the way we used to. I own the vision. I don't need a bunch of people competing for owning the vision. And I'm super simplifying this, but essentially, if you're in a company where the product management role is in flux, and there's uncertainty about what it is you're responsible for, what it is you're going to be responsible for this week. Should you be prototyping more? Should you be coding more? Should you be designing more? Should you be thinking strategy, or should you be embedded with the team? There's so many oars right now with the fundamental changes. I wanted to dig in to what the reality is in this whole ecosystem that we're seeing. I want to start with you, Shardul. So, and I gave the Airbnb example a minute ago, and they took this really centralized view of product management. And we talk about command and control versus empowerment from the Marty Kagan school of thought, or at least from that vernacular. is this just a founder personality thing? Is it a style of company thing? You talk to thousands of product managers, both on the air and in person. What are kind of the structural reasons that you see these conversations emerging the way that they are now?
Yeah. So in the last, I don't know, 3 or 5 months, I've had the chance to talk to a number, 25 or 30 different chief product officers, VPs of product, CEOs, and investors, right? They kind of run the spectrum of industries and company sizes.